Hello everybody and welcome to a video which will talk you through the theory of supply. On your screen you can see the part of the specification that we're looking at with this video. So it's 1.2.4 supply. So we're going to be looking at the distinction between a movement along a supply curve, which is going to be about contractions and extensions and things that make a supply curve shift. Right, just a few introductory key terms then first of all. Now supply is the quantity of a good or a service that a firm is willing and able to sell at a given price at a given period of time. It's a bit like demand was the quantity of a good or a service that people are willing and able to buy at a given price at a given period of time. We're now going to be thinking about firms in the market. So supply is what firms are willing and able to produce or sell at a given price at a given period of time. Now, what we assume a firm is any organisation that will bring together factors of production to produce goods and services. So, for example, if you were thinking about a shop will recruit labour. They will combine capital together. So this could be the actual shop premises itself. It could be the till, the shelves, etc. And they might buy land resources and then sell certain goods and services from their business. So what we assume is that firms, when they bring together factors of production, they're doing so to make profit. So when they sell goods and services, they will generate revenue. The factors of production will cost them money. So to work out the profit they make, you work out how much money they generate from their sales, which is their total revenue, and you would then deduct the costs of producing them goods and services, which is the costs of those factors of production. A lot of people say that all firms do, they turn inputs into outputs. So they will bundle together factors of production, which will cost them money, and then hopefully from the factors of production, they can produce sufficient output and then sell the output to generate more total revenue. So clearly, if total revenue exceeds total costs, they're making profit. If their revenue is less than their total costs, then the firm would be making a loss. Now, when we draw a supply curve, we could draw an individual supply curve, which would be the output that an individual firm is willing and able to produce at a given price at a given period of time. Or we could look at the market supply curve, and that would be adding together all those individual supply curves in a marketplace. So, for example, in the supermarket industry, we could look at the individual supply curve for Tesco, but the market supply curve would look at the combined supply curves of all of those different supermarkets in that industry. We can have two vastly ranging markets, really. We can have a competitive market, and this would be where there are lots of individual sellers in the marketplace, so lots of individual supply curves. And it would mean those businesses are going to compete hard to get people to come to their business. So again, if you look at the supermarket industry, you've got lots of rival firms in that marketplace, and they're all fighting for you to use their business to demand their goods and services. That often means the prices hopefully been quite attractive for consumers because those firms are fighting hard by lowering prices to get you to go to them. We can also have a market where we have firms that have got lots of market power. So the idea is these firms could work together to create what we call a cartel, where they look to raise prices together so they can earn more profit collectively. So this was often a market where you've got a few firms that haven't got many rivals in the marketplace. Right, you've got here a supply curve. Now, a bit like demand, when we draw a supply curve, we're making the assumption of ceteris paribus. The only thing that's changing along this supply curve is price. Okay, so any other factor which will influence supply is being held constant. We want to see how price will affect supply. Right, so for example, if we start off at P1, Q1, if there was an increase in market price, this could be driven by higher demand in the marketplace, then it means that firms become more willing and able to produce at P2. So the quantity produced would increase from Q1 to Q2. Now what we've got here is an extension in supply. As price levels increase in the market, firms become more willing and able to produce because there's more potential to make profit in the marketplace. If price then increased again from P2 to P3, we'd have another extension in supply. So that further increase in price means that firms become more willing and able to produce. So you might find if this was a market supply curve, there'll be more firms entering the marketplace. So guys, when price levels increase in the marketplace, we get a movement up the supply curve, which will be an extension in supply. If price levels fall, we're going to get a contraction in supply. So the idea will be firms become less willing and able to produce when price levels start to fall in the marketplace. Now, hopefully what you can see here is that this time we have a positive relationship between price and quantity. As price levels increase, firms become more willing and able to produce. That incentive of the profit motive will drive more firms to enter the market as price levels increase. As price levels fall, it becomes more difficult to make profit. So the supply of goods in this market will start to go down. Right, now just to pause for a few moments or so, you've got here question 1. So you've got A, which is looking at defining some key terms. You've got B, which is about drawing some supply curves. And then C is explaining that positive relationship between price and supply. So what I'd now like you to do, please, is to copy down these questions, hit pause, write down your answers, and when you've put down your answers, hit play and carry on watching the rest of the video. Make sure, though, before you hit play, that you fully understand the answers that you've written down, please. Right, so hit pause, and when you're ready, hit play. Right, now in the previous slides, we were looking at what leads to movement along the supply curve. What we're now going to do is looking at what causes supply to shift. So, for example, when supply moves outwards, we're looking at why firms have become more willing and able to produce when we've held prices constant. So if you look at those two diagrams, then an outward shift in supply from S1 to S2 shows that the quantity produced by firms has increased even though the price has been held constant. In the second diagram, so the one on the right, we've got an inward shift in supply. So firms have now become less willing and able to produce in this market with a fixed selling price. So at P1, firms are now less willing and able to produce. Now you've got here a list of different factors which will influence supply. Now the rough rule of thumb is that if supply moves outwards, then we've got a reduction in the cost of production. So at price 1, if total cost of production starts to fall, it becomes more attractive to produce goods in the market. There's more potential to make profit than what there was before. In the diagram on the right, when supply moves inwards, it means that it's become more difficult to make profits at that price level. So that means the costs of production have started to increase. So guys, in the first diagrams, to reiterate that point, when supply moves outwards at price 1, firms have become more willing and able to produce. There's more potential for profit at P1 than what there was before. That is normally associated with a reduction in the cost of production. The diagram on the right, inward shift in supply at price 1, it's become more difficult to make profit at that price level. That's normally associated with an increase in the costs of production. Right, everyone, so you've got here then an outward shift in supply. So this is an increase in supply for non-price reasons. So at the original price level, we've got more firms willing and able to produce in this marketplace. And like I said, we normally associate this with a reduction in the costs of production. So you've got here a list of different factors which could lead to an outward shift in supply. Now, the first point I put down is costs of production fall, which ultimately is cheaper factors of production. So if wage rates were to fall in the market, you can recruit labour for cheaper, and that would mean there's more scope to make profits at the existing price level. It could be that your land resources have become cheaper. So, for example, if you're a factory producing, let's say, sandwiches, then it could be that you can buy your bread from the baker for a lower price. It could be that the cost of the ham or the meat fillings have become cheaper. So anything that drives down the cost of production, so cheaper factors of production, would lead to an outward shift in supply. Now, the next one could be access to better technology, which allows firms to become more productive. So again, in this sandwich shop, if they've now got access to better production line equipment, it might mean now that they need fewer workers. Machines can complete more of the work. Maybe those machines are more productive at producing sandwiches than what workers would be. If that's the case, the firms become more efficient and there will be an outward shift in the supply curve. It could be driven by a reduction in taxes. So when firms produce, they have to pay taxes on profits. They've got to contribute towards other taxes such as VAT, etc. as well. So if these taxes fall, again, we are in effect reducing the costs of production for firms and they become more willing and able to supply at existing price levels. The opposite of a tax is a government subsidy. And this is a grant handed to businesses from governments. And normally these subsidies are used to encourage businesses to produce more goods and services. Well, ultimately, what subsidies do is the government saying to the business, look, here you go, here's some money. And that will then contribute towards them costs of production. So in other words, the government are picking up the bill for some of the costs of production for the firm. And again, that will incentivize the firm to produce more goods and services. Now, the final one I've put down is a decrease in the price of other goods and services, which could also be produced. Right, let's now think about a decrease in supply. So things that cause supply to shift inwards instead. Now, what we're showing here then is at this original price level, firms have become less willing and able to produce. This could be driven by an increase in business costs, which means that factors of production have become more expensive. So it could be for a car factory, maybe the cost of the land, which they build their factories on, have become more expensive, or the rent on them has increased. It could be that wage rates have been driven upwards, which means that labour is now more expensive to employ. Or it could be that the capital, the machinery, has become more expensive to use. Okay, now of course it could be land resources becoming more expensive. So it could be the costs of the iron ore for the steel has become more expensive. It could be the energy bills to operate the factory have also become more expensive. Now, if technology becomes more difficult to obtain, that would again increase the cost of production. That could lead to lower productivity and mean that firms become less willing and able to produce. It could also be driven by an increase in taxes. If you've got to pay the government more money when you produce goods and services, again, that will raise the costs of production. It could be less subsidies from government. So if the government start to give you less money or less grants towards your production, firms have to pick up more of the bill themselves, and that will again raise the costs of making goods and services. It could be an increase in the price of other goods and services, which could also be produced. And then finally, I've put down here expected future price increases. The idea could be if firms are worried about prices increasing in the future, then they might hold back stock to earn higher price on it in the future. So if you've made, let's say, a load of cars, and what you're aware of is in the future, price levels might be growing, you may become less willing and able to sell those goods and services now because you're thinking in the future you can sell them for more money. So you're going to reduce supply now to hold back for when then price levels start to increase. Right, now you've got here some numerical examples which will hopefully explain to you the difference between movements up a supply curve but also then shifts of a supply curve. Right, now in both of these diagrams we could talk about an increase in supply. So look at the first diagram first of all. If we were to increase price from £1.20 to £2, if we imagine the cost of producing this product is £1, but if we hold those costs of production constant, when the selling price is £1.20, we could imagine that we've got 10 individual businesses that are willing and able to produce this product. Now, what that would mean is that if the price is £1.20 and the cost of production is £1, the profit margin is 20p on every single good that's sold. Now, 10 firms might think this is acceptable profit to want to be in this marketplace. If we then increase selling price to £2, you can see that the number of firms in the market has grown from 10 to 14. Now, the idea now is at £2, at the original cost of £1 to produce this good or service, there is now a £1 profit margin for every single product that's sold. Well, that higher ability to make profit would incentivize an extension in supply. Now, in the second diagram, what I've done, I've held the selling price constant at £1.20. Now, remember, originally, I'm going to assume that the cost of production was £1. So I'm now assuming at £1.20, I've got 12 firms willing and able to produce this product. That 20p profit is incentivizing 12 firms to want to enter and stay in this marketplace. Now imagine that the cost of production fall to 80p. We can now see the market supply curve is 25. At that £1.20 price tag now, there's now a 40p profit margin. So that £1.20 selling price minus the cost of production of 80p is 40p. Now that will incentivize more firms to enter the market due to that increased ability to make profits. So guys, in the first diagram, as price levels increase, we're holding cost of production constant. Price levels grow, we're going to get an extension in supply. We've got an increased ability to make profit. On the second diagram, at £1.20, we can get an outward shift in supply. As costs of production fall, more firms become willing and able to produce. Now, of course, we could think about these things in reverse as well. If we think about the first diagram again, at a selling price of £2, we had 14 firms willing and able to produce. If the selling price was to fall, then it means as price levels fall, there's less ability to make profits. So we're going to get that contraction in supply. On the right-hand side diagram, if supply was to move inwards from S2 to S1, that would be caused by an increase in the cost of production. At £1.20, there's now less ability to make profit on that good or service. Right, everyone, now just to bring together the end of this video, what I would now like you to do is to think about question 2. So I now want you to think about shifts in supply. So A, draw an outward shift in supply and explain 4 potential causes of the outward shift in supply. And then C, draw an inward shift in supply and explain 4 potential causes of an inward shift in supply. So again, hit pause, write down your answers, please. And then when you're comfortable, you've reached the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching.